we're probably using money as a surrogate for something else or as a mechanism to soothe ourselves. So if we're
Mm.
really stressed out or if we get triggered for some reason or we're just, just not in a very good place emotionally and personally, that's usually when we use money, just like we do like food, alcohol, other things like that, as a way to make ourselves feel better temporarily.
Welcome back to the Dangerous Women podcast, where we empower you to live a life that is unstoppable inside and out. I'm your host, Colleen Conlon, and today we're diving into the topic that's just as important as building muscle or mastering nutrition. We're talking about your financial health. We've all heard it, money makes the world go round. But what about making sure your money is working for you? Whether you're crushing it in your career, building your dream business, or just trying to take control of your financial future, this episode is just for you. Today, I'm bringing in a true expert in all things money, Jessica Moorhouse, who is going to break down how to get our finances in shape, just like we do with our bodies. Jessica is a sought-after money expert, TV personality, and speaker with over 13 years of experience in financial education. She's an accredited financial counselor in Canada and an award-winning creator behind the chart-topping More Money podcast with over 4 million downloads. She's been featured by major media outlets like CBC News, CTV News, Forbes, and US Today. And her debut book, Everything But Money: The Hidden Barriers Between You and Financial Freedom, was released this past year. In this episode, we'll talk about how to start building wealth, the mindset shifts we need to make about money, and how to take control of our financial future without stress. So grab your notebook and get ready to take some notes because we're about to make your financial health just as strong as your physical health. Let's dive in. Jessica, what does it mean to be financially healthy?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely something that is, you need to define it for yourself, though there are some kind of baseline things to kind of check off to feel, happy and secure and overall healthy with your finances, what I kind of call a financial foundation that everyone should have. What that really looks like is making sure you've got your debt under control or no debt, have a really healthy emergency fund. And really, that just looks like having a savings account you are putting money into, don't touch unless there's an emergency, and ideally would have 3 to 6 months of your living expenses in there. So in order to get that number to figure out, well, what is 3 to 6 months of my living expenses, we also need to figure out, well, how much money is coming in, how much money is going out, and you figure that out with a spending plan, or you can call it a budget. I prefer calling it a spending plan because no one likes the term budget anymore. And really just understanding, where is your money going and is it going in the right places? Is it going into your savings accounts, your investment accounts, so you can reach some of your goals? And are you able to make sure you're paying all of your bills on time every time? And is everything kind of in balance? So that's, to me, what financially healthy means, is making sure that everything's kind of good and balanced.
I love that. We have like a lot of actionable things
Yeah.
to kind of just like check off the
Yeah.
list and focus in on. For somebody who maybe just heard all of the things that you said and they're just like, oh, fuck, I'm actually not financially healthy. Where is a really good place to start?
So I always tell people, it does come down to that spending plan. Like, that is kind of the foundation for everything. So we need to know money coming in, money going out, and are we happy with what we see? And so, one of the things that I do is I'm a financial counselor. So I work with clients one-on-one, and I get to do a deep dive into what's going on with their money, seeing where it's landing. Because sometimes, ultimately, usually what happens is people come to me, they're not happy with their situation. They don't understand what's going on. I make, decent money, but it's never going into the places I want, or I'm always, there's like $0 in my bank account. How is that possible? And so it's really understanding, what do we want to save for and what are our kind of regular expenses? And then the other element of, making sure, okay, how do we actually apply this plan once we said this is everything in balance, this is what we'd like to happen with our money, is taking a look at what's actually going on. And that's kind of the hardest part, I'd say, when I work with a client, is really taking a look at where is your money going? Because unless you're tracking it, you are just guessing and you're giving your best guess. But sometimes there's things that, oh, I forgot about that. Oh, that was like an automatic thing that just goes on my credit card. I forgot I signed up for that. I mean, so many times I work with a client and there's a subscription that you don't remember subscribing to. And likely it was a free trial they forgot to cancel. And so there's a lot of things that will pop up in your spending that will then be kind of the explanation for why you're not able to save as much as you should be able to, or why you keep getting into debt, or why there's $0 in your bank account.
And I find on social media, I keep getting these advertisements for these like different apps that are supposed to like clean up your subscriptions.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's the
I mean,
universe just trying to like fuck me over.
well, I'm just like, do you really need an app to tell you what subscriptions? Like, just look at your statements. It takes 2 seconds and it's free. You know, like, and literally, how many subscriptions could you possibly like? Unless someone's dealing with like 20 plus subscriptions, maybe a service like that could be helpful. But most people, maybe five, maybe 10 at the most. And you could easily find that out by just downloading your transactions, downloading your statements from your credit cards, and taking a little highlighter or just doing it on. I do everything online with spreadsheets, taking a look, and you're like, oh, there we are. There it is. And I'd say even too, because there may be some annual expenses that happen as well, taking a good look at 12 months of statements, which again sounds like a big headache, but that may be the only way that you will find that, oh, the annual expense that, oh, I thought I was going to cancel, but I forgot to put it in my calendar. And then I got charged $500 for this thing that I don't need, and they won't let me, get reimbursed for it. So taking a look at your spending will show you a lot about your habits, but also the emotions that you go through with your money throughout the year. For example, there's different seasons for our spending. Sometimes, we're pretty good with our spending, and sometimes, ooh, what was going on there in April? Apparently, I spent a lot of money. And sometimes you could take a look at your calendar or your social calendar or what was going on in your life, and you may find out, oh, right, I was going through a breakup or something, or I was just having a really stressful time at work. And so I was spending a lot of money to try to make myself happy. So sometimes your spending will also show you what you were going through in a certain moment in time that then, upon reflection, and what my kind of book is all about is really understanding your relationship with money, the emotions behind your money, so you don't have to repeat those patterns every year. Because most of the time, when you look at your spending and you see there's, oh, wow, I spent a lot of money that month and I wish I hadn't, you don't feel good. You wish you could go back in time and do something different. Well, we can't go back in time, but the best thing that we can do moving forward is to make sure that we don't repeat those same patterns moving forward.
So, how often do you encourage or you yourself look to track where is my money going?
So I have a system that I encourage people to do. I've like budget spreadsheets on my website, and then I use the exact same spreadsheets. That's why I built them to do it monthly. And so I don't believe in like doing it weekly or anything like that. Again, do whatever makes sense for you. But for me, I like to have a dedicated 1 or 2 hours to do my finances once per month, and then I move on with my life.
Hmm.
And so what that looks like is taking a look at my budget, just seeing like, okay, what did I want to happen this month? Then put in all of my spending into the spreadsheet to see where the money went. I have another tab that tracks my net worth. And so that's really taking a look at all of your, bank accounts, savings accounts, investment accounts, any kind of assets that you have, and then taking a look at any debts that you owe. So that could be your credit cards, line of credit, mortgage, whatever. So your net worth is just your assets minus your liabilities, and then you find out what your net worth is. And I love doing that. And that's a really important element because you find out where are you at financially, especially compared to like your peers or maybe where you should be. There's lots of statistics out there of where you should be by a certain age. And so it just gives you a good idea of like, okay, this is where I'm at. Okay, we want to kind of do better. So if we track our spending, we make some better choices, then we will hopefully see our net worth grow every single month. And so this is a practice I don't just tell people to do. I've been doing it in alignment with my husband for 8 years now. 8 years we've been tracking every single dollar. And again, takes a couple hours per month. I put on, a comfort show, do some data entry, have a glass of wine or a cup of coffee or something yummy, and just get to work. And then you have that information that will help you make better choices moving forward. And for me, it's been helpful, especially doing it so long term, because Not only is it now a habit, it doesn't feel like a big deal for me to do it. When you're getting started doing it for the first time, it may feel like a bit of a headache, but eventually it just becomes like, oh yeah, this is just something I do. It's just a routine, like anything like taking out the garbage bins every week or something like that. And then you have all of this information that shows you the progress you've made. Because I think often if you don't track anything, you have no evidence for how well you did or how not so well you did. And so if you track things, you have a good idea of, oh, wow, we actually did pretty well. So I'm able to see where I was at January 2017 and now compare it to myself in January 2025. And it's amazing what time can do and compound interest can do and just earning more money and spending better and just, trying every month to do a little bit better with your money. It's amazing what kind of progress you can do, but you won't know unless you have those numbers in front of you.
I love everything that you're saying so much because, I actually use I call it the bank account analogy, and I use it
hmm
a lot in having conversations around fitness where it's like, if you put $100 into the bank, it's going to add up. If you put $10 into the bank, it's going to add
Yeah.
up. The only time
Mhm.
nothing adds up is when you put $0 into that bank account.
Exactly.
So everything
Exactly.
you're saying, it sounds like we need to make sure we have a really solid foundation, or we can necessarily think about bigger things like accumulating wealth.
Yeah, like all those really big things, I think sometimes those get in the way of such as like, I should be earning more money. I should get a better job. Should I go back to school? Or I should be investing more money, or I should start investing. These are really big, important things and sometimes a bit overwhelming. So I always tell people if you're not there yet, then we have to start from the basics and build our way up because you can't, yeah, just start at an advanced level when you're a beginner. We want to gradually learn the things that we need and improve some of our habits. So when we are at that point, we're like, okay, great. I've got my spending under control. I'm paying down my debt. I've got a good repayment plan for that. I've got a good system going on. Then you can kind of sit back, take a minute, and then jump into the next step, whatever that may be for you. But yeah, you don't want to, I see too many, especially young people think because they get information from, online or whatever and feel like, oh my gosh, I need to start investing or I need to start a business right away. It's like, don't do any of that before you've got the foundation, though, because then you're, building a house on a mountain of sand. It's not going to work out. We want to make sure we've got a solid thing that we can come back to before getting to those more intense, more complicated things.
So I'm going to need your help to remind the listeners what are those foundational pieces that we
Mhm.
need to be rock solid. You said 3 to 6 months of
Your living expenses. So that's your emergency fund. I always say that should be your number one goal. And, very well, you may look in your bank accounts. You're like, oh, actually, I do have some cash in the bank and I just didn't know what it was for. Great. You already have your emergency fund. We're great. But for most people I deal with, they don't have much cash in the bank starting off. So that is the number one priority, even before paying off debt. So still make your minimum payments on whatever debts that you have. We always want to make sure we make those minimum payments, but the priority should be saving up cash. And the reason I say this is too many people get advice saying they should pay off debt first. That should be their number one priority. If you're not also saving up cash, if something happens and life always throws something at you, how are you going to pay for it? You're going to get back into debt because that is your only means to pay for whatever that emergency or that thing that popped up. We want to have cash in the bank so we never have to go back and borrow more money because we're trying to pay off the money we've borrowed already. So, emergency fund first. And then if you have debt, and especially I'd preface this with high interest debt. So that's credit cards, 19-20% you're probably being charged. Maybe a line of credit could be, 12%, 11%, depends. Any kind of high interest debt, anything I'd say above 8% should be the priority to pay off because let's say, like, well, or I could instead be investing this money and grow my wealth. Yes, but it is very difficult to make that kind of return investing in the market, like a 20% return. You're not going to get 20% consistent returns annually. Sometimes there's a really good year in 2024, there was a really good year for the stock market. With that said, though, that's, it's not always the case. Sometimes there's negative years. There's years in the market where you make negative returns. And so really we want to get that guaranteed rate of return, which is paying off your high interest debt. And then once your high interest debt is paid off, then you could shift your focus onto, putting more money into the bank and investing and getting those returns.
Where would you encourage somebody who maybe they do have that foundation and they're ready to invest? Where is a good place to actually put your money these days?
Yeah. So there's a lot of opinions out there. For me, I believe in the what's called the passive investing strategy. So it is really focused on this idea of having a well-diversified portfolio. So you're investing in lots of different, regions, markets, companies, and asset types all around the world. So that's what diversification means, putting your eggs in lots of different baskets instead of, just putting it in one basket. Like, I only invest in crypto. It's like, well, that's good if crypto goes up, not good if crypto goes down. We want to make sure we're diversified and putting our eggs in lots of different baskets. And one low cost way of doing that is by investing what's called an index fund. And in Canada, where I'm from, and even in the US, actually, index fund, they come in two different forms. Some people misuse the term, but really an index fund can either be a mutual fund or an exchange traded fund, ETF. I'm a big fan of ETFs because they have much lower fees and they're very accessible. And so, I can go on and on about talking about investing. I have a specific course on investing specifically for Canadians, but really a great place to look into is maybe a robo advisor. Vanguard has some really great resources and some products there. But something like that, or a target date ETF or something like that, those might be some things that you want to explore when you're looking at what are some of my options when it comes to investing.
I think that's great. I think a lot of times I've encountered this with different women in my circle, clients, friends, and it's just like, we didn't get the education on
No.
this in school necessarily, unless it was something that you majored in. So where do I go?
Yeah, it's a whole, I mean, for me, I was in the same boat in my late 20s. I had been investing, but it was with an advisor, the bank. I didn't really understand what I was investing in, like so many people I talked to. I just thought I was doing the right thing, getting someone to invest for me. But I realized I don't want to buy something I don't understand, and I don't know what kind of fees I'm paying. And it turned out I was paying very high fees, and I wasn't necessarily getting the returns I was expecting. And so for me, I made it a priority to teach myself about investing, reading books, taking courses. For me, I took like a kind of ultra path that most people don't need to take, which is then, getting some credentials, becoming a financial planner, things like that. But that education and just learning what I did not know, because it kind of scared me. I thought it was too complex, or maybe I wasn't smart enough to learn how to investing, all this kind of stuff, because the investing world can be very intimidating. What I recognized after doing some research over the past, maybe a year or two was, oh, this actually isn't this complicated. It doesn't have to be. There are complicated facets of investing, but for just regular people like you and me, it really doesn't have to be that complicated. Investing in, yeah, that low cost, diversified portfolio of index funds, which again, I've interviewed hundreds of really smart money experts and investors on my own podcast, the More Money Podcast. Almost, yeah, no, I'd say every single one of them, even if they come from a different background or they have a different investing philosophy, they will always admit that, but index investing is a really great strategy for most people. So that is for me, once I really understood that, I'm like, okay, this makes sense for me. I like this. I don't have to play, be a day trader. I don't have to get into things that are really risky, that don't make me comfortable. This makes sense to me. So I'm just going to learn more about this. And that's what I've been doing ever since. And it's been, yeah, really great.
What is the book you would recommend for anybody who wants to get into this as like that
Yeah.
friendly entry gateway book?
It's interesting over the past, so I've had my podcast for almost 10 years. It's been interesting to see the evolution of experts and authors. When I first started, there really weren't that many, and now there's so many. So there's quite honestly there's a voice for any person. And so when I was just getting started, it was mainly white men who were writing books, and hey, lots of them were great. But sometimes you want someone that looks like you or has a similar background. And so for me, like the entry point book that really made things click or got me excited was from another white man, which is fine. But Andrew Hallam, he's Canadian and writes this great book called Millionaire Teacher, which has been a bestseller for years and years. And it's just because he's so down to earth and just makes things really digestible and really easy. But for other investing books, gosh, I mean, there's some that are more technical, there's some that are less technical. I'm trying to find like one that I would suggest right off the bat, but it's kind of difficult when there's so many. But I would suggest taking a look on my website. There's a page that says favorite things. And I have like, because I get questions all the time, what book? I'm like, well, there's like a lot of books out there.
We'll make sure to put that in the show notes.
Yeah. So there's a link of books by Canadians, books by Americans, books by people outside of North America. Because again, you may want someone who is from your country, and then you can kind of take a look at who's interesting to you. Because there's so many great voices out there now compared to when it got started, which is great. Because sometimes that things won't click until you're hearing it from someone who gets you.
I
Yeah.
totally see that. I'm always a little bit more curious to learn from a woman than I
Yeah.
necessarily am from a man. Just gonna
Yeah.
throw it right out
Exactly.
there.
And there's some really great investing books. Actually, one that I would suggest by an American woman is it's called Invest Like a Girl. It's a play on words and kind of a tongue in cheek. And there's a very good, well-written book. And it just came out, I want to say maybe a year or two ago. So it's very relevant, very fresh. So that might be one that I'd actually suggest. She was really, really, yeah, well thought out book.
Well, we definitely have to check that out. I want
Yeah.
to ask you a question where we're going to kind of like pivot gears a little bit. Is there a mindset component that you see as like very common coming up with some of the women that you have worked with over the years in regards
Mhm.
to reestablishing a healthier relationship with their money
Yeah.
mindset?
I mean, definitely. That's why I wrote the book Everything But Money, which is all about mindset, your relationship with money, and really digging deep into, how you think, feel about money, how you value money, how you behave with money. And what I've realized, especially, specifically with women, and it kind of going back onto the investing conversation, one thing I would notice over and over was that a lot of women just had a lack of confidence. And, of course, part of the argument is like, well, we just weren't taught this stuff. And we weren't. But a lot of men weren't necessarily, they didn't get classes that we didn't get. But sometimes they were invited into conversations that we weren't, possibly from their parents or, their, male caregivers or something like that. Or, they just had more access. Or, there's just a lot of books by men that they're like, oh, great, I can identify with that. But as a woman, it might be harder for you to read that book because you just can't, identify with the author or, it's just a little bit harder to get into. And so that was one thing I would hear over and over. It's like, I just don't think I'm good at investing. It's like, how would you know unless you tried? And actually, what I discovered doing research for my book is the truth is the data shows consistently women are actually better investors than men because, funnily enough, we're less emotional than them. Men are very emotional creatures, as women all know. And when it comes to investing, they make choices based off of their emotions, whether they're afraid or really excited. That is how a lot of male investors make choices. And hence why we see all these meme stock stuff and the crypto coins and whatever. They are jumping on emotions and making sometimes some irrational choices, whereas women are much more pragmatic and can follow through with a long-term investment strategy like index investing and just can be consistent no matter what the market's doing. If it's up or down, we will just continue to invest because we see that long-term strategy and we just are less emotional beings and can be a little bit more rational. So that's something to kind of keep in mind if you're afraid that you're a woman and you're like, I don't know if I'm good at this. Well, the data shows that you probably are actually pretty good at this. You just haven't tried it yet.
Are you ready to start building strength but feel overwhelmed by complicated workouts and influencers on social media? Foundations is your answer. If you're new to strength training and want a simple, effective way to get stronger, build muscle, and drop body fat, Foundations was designed just for you. What you'll need to get started are just 3 kettlebells. That's it. These 3 kettlebells are all you need to unlock your strength, start building muscle, and start seeing real results. There's no fancy moves, no complicated routines, just the basics that will help you to progress safely and confidently. What you'll get when you join: simple, proven exercises where you will master foundational movements like squats, deadlifts, and presses that will give you strength and confidence. A progressive training program, step-by-step video and written guidance to help you improve no matter where you are starting from. A safe, effective training routine. You'll get to focus on form and build a body that's strong from the inside out. And the best part, it's DIY. You can start right away, no waiting around. You just buy the program today and you get to start building strength from the comfort of your home. You don't need to be fancy to get strong. You just need a solid foundation and the right approach. Foundations is perfect for the woman who is new to strength training and wants to take it at her own pace. She wants to feel empowered, she wants to feel strong, and she wants to feel more confident in her body. If you're ready to begin, visit www.colleenconlon.com for more details and grab your foundations program today. Again, all you need are 3 kettlebells. I'll take care of the rest. What words of encouragement would you give to that woman who currently
Yeah.
believes that she's not good enough?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you that money in no matter what kind of area, whether it's investing or budgeting or taxes or anything like that, it is not a talent, it is a skill. That was one thing. Again, I can completely understand that frame of mind because I used to feel the same way. I thought maybe I'm good at the budgeting and staying out of debt and being frugal, but maybe I'm not good at investing. Maybe that's just not something for me. And then I would honestly see people that I knew had less education and just, less wherewithal invest and talk about how much they knew about investing, even though I'm like, I don't think that's actually quite right. Or I don't think that's, accurate. Like I would think this in my head, but never kind of speak it. I'm like, you know what? Actually, I think I do know more than I am giving myself credit for. And I think I actually can learn this because there's some people that aren't, the smartest, they're doing it. So I guess maybe actually it's not, rocket science like we all think. Anyone can learn this stuff. I think it's really those internal barriers, the kind of, thoughts that we're putting on ourselves, or just that those kind of barriers that are preventing us from, the imposter syndrome of it all, I guess, is probably what's actually making it so hard to think that you can do it. But I'm telling you, just pick up a few books and you'll start to make things click and understand this stuff. And again, I've had this investing course for about 4 years now. It's about 90% women. And it's amazing to see the strides they've made and just realizations after they finish the course. Be like, oh, this makes so much sense. And I get it. Like, this isn't that crazy. I can absolutely implement this stuff. Absolutely. Anyone can learn this stuff. That includes you.
Your course is just for Canadians?
It is just for Canadians. So if you're American, the one course I would point you to is Amanda Holden. I'm going to look it up right now so I don't get it wrong, but she has a course called Invested Development. So she's based out of, actually, let me make sure that is correct. Invested Development. Yes, Invested Development is her course. She's had her course for probably as long as mine, if not longer. And she's amazing. And she's based out of the US. So if you're US and you want that information, because it is different between our countries, I definitely check her out.
I think that sounds fantastic. Can I ask you a myth busting question
Sure.
next? Yeah. Okay. Is it possible to just be frugal AF, or do you have to invest in order to generate wealth?
Yeah, you have to invest. Yeah.
Okay.
You can't just,
No way around
you
it.
cannot coupon your way to millionaire status. And that's just because of things like inflation and compound interest. It's just the math that shows you that there's only so much you can do by living below your means. And if you want to keep up with inflation, again, inflation has been quite high for the past couple of years. You'll see that, yeah, you'll be able to get higher interest on your savings account, but inflation's still going to eat it. And so you'll maybe make 1%, 2% if you're lucky. Whereas if you invest your money, you could be making 10, 12 upwards percent. And again, that money compounds on itself over every single year. And that is how you see these people that are, young or in their 30s that have somehow $100,000 in the bank or $1 million in the bank. They invested that money. So you're just never going to ever save up enough cash and let that money grow just by sitting in a savings account for it to be enough money to afford something like retirement where you're going to need a couple $1 million, unfortunately. So everyone has to invest their money, but it's, it does come together. You do want to live within your means and, be mindful of your spending so you can square away and have more cash flow so you can invest. So you can't just invest and spend whatever you want. You've got to do both.
Can you tell us your thoughts on debt and credit cards? How many credit cards should somebody have? How many credit cards is too much?
Well, I mean, it depends on what the purpose of the credit cards are. For example, there's a lot of people I know who are very much into the rewards, points of it all, that kind of strategy. So they'll get multiple credit cards in order to get some bonuses or to accumulate all these points, but they have a specific strategy. And it's, a dangerous game if you don't know what you're doing because If you're just spending on these credit cards and you don't have the cash to pay them off, then you're in debt. We don't want to do that. I mean, for myself, let's see, I've got two credit cards for my business. And the reason I have two credit cards for my business is one is specific that I don't get charged a foreign transaction fee. A lot of my subscriptions for my business are US based. I'm based out of Canada. And so whenever I'm charged one of those subscriptions, they will charge me a foreign, like it's in USD, and then it has to convert to Canadian and I get charged a fee. So I have a credit card specifically to not charge me a fee for converting the currency. And then I have another Amex that is just kind of another credit card that is kind of a safety. So I think in general, everyone should have at least two credit cards for their business and personally. And personally, I have, let's see, my oldest credit card I've had since college because that has a lot of great credit history. I think it was 18 when I got it and 38 now. So that has like 20 years of credit history that really helps me with my credit scores. So keeping that for a lifetime. Rarely use it though. Put like one transaction on it per year so I don't get a, insufficient or a fee for not using my credit card, whatever that is supposed to be called. I have another kind of backup personal card and then another personal card that is kind of my predominant card. I use that more often than the other one. And then I have two joint credit cards. One we've been using for a number of years for all of our joint expenses. But now we're kind of shifting to this other credit card just because, again, it has kind of more benefits and some more points features. So I don't know how many credit cards it is, like 5, 6, 7. I don't know. I have quite a few, but they all have a specific purpose. And I'm always monitoring them because I've never been in credit card debt and I certainly don't want to start because I've seen how destructive it can be. So I'm very mindful of what goes on each credit card. And again, because I track everything monthly, I know exactly what's going on in each card, pay it off. Honestly, I pay my credit cards off, I'd say every 2 weeks instead of once a month, just so I can feel like I'm on top of things. So, small answer, it depends.
Is there ever a time to get rid of a credit card?
Yeah, I'd say, never get rid of that first one that has all that credit history because that really benefit you. But if you have a couple ones that you're like, I don't know why I have this card, it's not really serving me anymore, then yeah, you may see a dip in your credit score temporarily. But if it's, maybe charging you an annual fee or you just don't using it, you just don't want it, get rid of it. It's not, there's other ways to build up your credit besides credit cards. So I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to cancel your card that's you're not using anymore and you don't like it. Get rid of it. I've done
Now,
it. It's fine.
something that we talked about at the beginning of the episode was listing off some things that are like unhealthy from a financial standpoint. And is it safe to say debt is that's not healthy?
I mean, no. I mean, there are some different types of debt. For example, I have a mortgage and I'm going to have a mortgage for a long time. And that's pretty typical when you're going to buy a home. So, that's kind of, I wouldn't say like good debt, but that's like the least bad debt because it's generally pretty low interest, it's long term, and, there's just a little bit of there's less stigma around having a mortgage. So that's, the least bad, I guess, of the debts. I don't like saying debt is bad. It's just you're borrowing money for a purpose, but you don't want to stay in debt. So borrowing isn't a problem. Credit isn't bad. I mean, it's a great useful tool. But if you're spending more than you're earning or spending more than you can afford and you keep on borrowing and you're just in this cycle of debt, it's not a great place to be. I see just so many people how it limits you. It gives you less options compared to if you had no debt and cash in the bank. You have more options on what you can do with your life and your spending and things like that. And so when you're in debt, not only I see a lot of people struggle with, this sense of shame because there's, again, a lot of stigma around having debt. A lot of people blame the person. Oh, why did you make that choice? You should have known better. But again, most of the people I know that do end up in debt, it's not because they're just shopping a lot. It's usually because something happened, breakdown in a relationship. They lost their job. There's all these things that happened and they just did not have the cash on hand to pay for it. And that's a very normal thing. And then they got into debt because they need to pay for their bills. So, it's in general, we want to really make sure that we stay out of debt, or if we're in debt, let's make a plan and really focus on paying it down. Because again, it will give you more freedom once you're out of it. It just limits your everything when you're in debt.
Now, is that one of those situations like something that I run into a lot within the fitness industry is it depends. It depends on each person, the situation. When it comes to somebody trying to get out of debt, how do you start that
Yeah.
process?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely depends, but there are some strategies that are kind of tried and true that work for a lot of people. I mean, the first thing you're going to want to do is, and again, when you're kind of doing the strategy I kind of talked about, where you're doing your net worth and you're seeing what your assets and liabilities are, one thing is when you're looking at your liabilities, your different debts, you can easily pinpoint, okay. Also, I usually, when I work with a client, we go through all their debts line by line and I'm like, okay, how much do you owe? What's the balance on that? What's the interest rate on this? What are the terms of this loan? Is it a loan or is it revolving credit? What is it? All these kinds of things. And then also I ask them, which one is giving you the hardest time? Which one do you just hate and you wish you could get rid of? It's gnawing at you. So there's kind of two main strategies when it comes to paying off your debt. There's the snowball method, the avalanche method. I think the snowball is the most popular, and I get why. It is when you take a look at all of your debts and then you kind of organize them in terms of priority sequence for which one is the smallest balance to the biggest balance. The idea is that you are going to try to pay off, regardless of the interest rate, the smallest balance. So if you have like $1,000 on a credit card, but then you have like another credit card that's $5,000 and then a line of credit that's 10,000, we're going to pay off that $1,000 because it'll take you a shorter amount of time to do it. And then once you pay that off, then you're going to go from 3 to 2 debts. And that's going to feel really good. And you're going to get this level of confidence and momentum that you're like, hey, we did that. Let's go on to the next debt. And then you figure out a way to kind of put on more than that minimum balance to pay off debt number 2 and then debt number 3. The avalanche method, which is more popular, I'd say probably with, financial advisors and stuff like that, is because mathematically it will save you the most money in terms of interest because you were going to pay off the highest interest rate debt first and then go all the way to the lowest interest. And that's because, well, the highest interest is charging the most money to keep that debt. So the quicker you get rid of it, then the more money that you'll save. But honestly, I don't know many people that use that. Snowball, the smallest balance one, that's the most successful with most people.
Well, I think that is some really fantastic advice that you just gave. Thank you so much. Is there anything else that you would say is a common unhealthy habit that
Yeah.
is occurring with different people that you can address right here, right now, that maybe hasn't come to my mind because I'm not the
Yeah.
expert on
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. I mean, the one, like kind of even the main focus of my book, Everything at Money, is that most of the time, if we feel like we're not really happy in our financial lives and we're making choices that later we regret, it's because we're probably using money as a surrogate for something else or as a mechanism to soothe ourselves. So if we're
Mm.
really stressed out or if we get triggered for some reason or we're just not in a very good place emotionally and personally, that's usually when we use money, just like we do like food, alcohol, other things like that, as a way to make ourselves feel better temporarily. But then typically it'll put us in a worse spot and then we'll feel really bad. And then we'll do the same thing again to feel a bit better. And that's how you're in a cycle of spending money in a way that's not helping you, it's hurting you, but you think in the moment it's going to help you a little bit. And
So
so, yeah.
when you run into people like this, is the initial thought, okay, we have, a coping mechanism here that is
Yes.
just not healthy. We need to go do some mental health work.
Absolutely. So that's, yeah, a big part of my book is talking about how there is professional financial help out there, which will help you with the how to's. That's a lot of what we talked about on this show. But then when you realized, I just can't figure out why I keep doing things that I know I shouldn't be doing. I know I shouldn't be spending that money. I know I shouldn't be putting anything extra on my credit card because I'm trying to pay it off. Why do I keep on self-sabotaging myself? That is where a mental health professional can step in and help you just kind of figure out where is this coming from. And so we can kind of break down some of these layers to really get to the root cause of what's really making you feel this way, why, where are kind of those internal emotional wounds that you were using money as a way to try to fix, but it's still not working. So yeah, you need both.
How frequently does that come up with people within your circle? Clients, friends, family?
Pretty frequently, I'd say. Personally, I think everyone should see a therapist. Just
I
like
do
we see the
too.
dentist and the doctor, let's all see a mental health professional to help us with our mental health. It makes logical sense to me if we're seeing people for our physical health. And so, sometimes people just need the how to ABCs of money, and that's great. But the reason I wrote my book was for everyone else that they're like, well, that didn't help, or I couldn't implement it, and I still can't figure it out. There's something blocking me. that is where we need a different toolkit. We need to talk about something else. We need to talk about what those hidden barriers are that are preventing you from getting out of your own way.
I'm like in awe right now because for anybody who's listening to this, I found Jessica via social media
Yeah.
and I was like, I think she's going to be a great fit for the podcast, but I had no idea that she was going to bring up how important the mental health aspect actually is, especially if, maybe you
Yeah.
have a unhealthy relationship in regards to finance, because that's so much of what
Yeah.
happens in all these conversations on this podcast. So that's just really funny. And
Hmm.
I'm
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
awe right
I
now
mean,
that I got
it's,
you.
yeah, I mean, it's funny, but I mean, the thing is, the reason I wrote my book as well is there's not many people that are talking about mental health and money. It's starting to have, we're starting to have those conversations. But if you go to, the personal finance or the business section where all those books are, most of them aren't going to talk about this. There's like a handful, maybe even less than a handful of books that will talk about the importance of mental health and connection with your money. But it's, to me, you're like, no, this is the thing that is preventing a lot of people from getting out of the situation they're in. Because there's definitely books for, you have a money issue, this is how you fix your money issue. But if your issue is something different, but money is in the mix, then we need to talk about it differently.
I just want to like drop the mic right now, Jessica. Well, let me ask you this in that case. Would you say, and this might seem kind of out of left field, ladies, but what are your thoughts on money and family
Mhm.
and giving your money to family? I was actually listening
Yeah.
to the episode this morning. You were talking, I don't know her name. She was the shopaholic.
Oh.
She
Which
was the
which year, which season, which year were you li I don't
I
know what episode.
I believe it was from
Shopaholic.
this last season. She was a shopaholic. She was
Hmm.
the daughter. Her dad would go to construction sites to like ask for lumber. And do you
Oh my
know what I'm
gosh.
talking about?
Yeah. That bad. I'm sorry. There's like 400 plus episodes. Who on earth? So are you sure it's from like 2024 sometime?
I
Let me
think
take a
so.
look at the
But okay,
schedule.
your
I
thoughts
believe
on
you. I'm just like, oh gosh, who did
so
I
her
talk to?
her parents paid off her debt, she said, and you guys were having a
Oh,
conversation about how, you know, that probably wasn't the smartest idea because she ended up back in like $30,000 worth of debt.
oh,
And
okay.
she had said something along the lines of, I wish they never helped.
So yeah, I don't know who you're talking about, but I will take a look at the archives to find out who we're talking about. But I'd say in general, it's tricky. In general, when money and family mix, it can be very complicated. I come from a family that we are always very self-sufficient and independent. However, if we were to give money to or receive money, it was always under the understanding that this is a gift. It is not a loan. We don't borrow from each other because that just, for us, I guess, from past experiences or down my family line, is always caused kind of some issues. And so, my grandfather definitely gave some gifts to me and my sisters when we were in university, like, a few $1,000s. That for me was a huge, because that helped me pay for my last year of university. So I didn't have to borrow more money. And so everything is kind of, that's how we kind of roll the dice. It's like everything is a gift. We don't borrow or lend. But there's, every family is different. Sometimes there is lending involved, especially if you want to buy a home. I mean, I live in Toronto, houses are over $1 million. And so most young people don't have that kind of money. And so they have to borrow, a down payment from their parents and stuff like that. And that can be confusing and complicated. So if you are in a family situation and there is borrowing going on, I always like to make sure that people understand the risks involved, but also have some terms. Write out a contract, have it written down instead of oh yeah, just an IOU. If it's a good chunk of money, we want it written down. We want to have terms so everyone's on the same page. And it is kind of like, this is business, it's not personal. And so let's have it all nice and organized, because then all parties are going to feel protected. But yeah, for the, well, I wish my parents didn't pay for that. That's tricky. That's because you're like, well, lots of people would be like, I wish I had that, So it's, I don't know. It's not perfect for everybody. And sometimes, your parents could do everything right in the world and all they want to do is provide for you. And then, your experience is something different than maybe what they intended. So it's really tricky. I don't know. There's no straight answer for that. It depends on the situation for sure.
I feel like I could keep you on the podcast for Like another 45 minutes, I feel like our time has just like flown
It
by.
has blown by, yeah.
So I want to be respectful of your time. Can you tell us a little bit more about your book and how people can learn more about you and potentially work with you?
Yeah, so it's called Everything But Money: The Hidden Barriers Between You and Financial Freedom. It's available everywhere. So wherever you buy your books, it should be there, especially online. You can find more information about it at jessicamoorhouse.com/book. I'm also doing a book tour across Canada and possibly in the US. We will see. We will see what happens. And yeah, the book really is about, like we kind of talked about, the reason it's called Everything But Money is because most people, what I found, most people struggles with money when it's not an income or an expense issue, but they're still struggling with their finances. The issue is everything but money. There's all the other issues that you're dealing with, and we go in depth about all of them so you can maybe figure out something more about yourself. And yeah, to follow me, I've got a podcast that's all about money called the More Money Podcast. We talk about kind of the practical how to, but also some of the stuff we talked about, the psychology, the behavior of it, and stuff like that. And you can follow me on Instagram at Jessica I. Moorhouse.
Well, you all know where to get in contact with Jessica now. And Jessica, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. And if anybody would like any of the links to anything that Jessica shared today, you can find them in the show notes. Thanks for tuning in. If this episode hit home, don't forget to leave a rating and review. Women are stronger together. So share this with a woman who you want to see rise. When we embrace positive takeaways, we level up. And when we share them, we change the world. Follow us on Instagram at the Dangerous Women Podcast and let us know what you want to hear next. And remember, dangerous women redefine wellness and the world. So be fierce, be authentic, be dangerous.